either just hold on to your questions or pop your questions in the chat, and we can address all of those at the very end. Otherwise, we can start recording and begin. Lovely. So welcome to our first Greener Footprint Sandwich Sessions webinar, Electric Vehicle Charging in Herefordshire. We're going to hear about some of the progress being made through electric vehicle charging infrastructure across the county, and as well as some of the challenges that are faced in trying to do that. Next slide, please, Tina. So for those of you that don't know, Greener Footprints is a Herefordshire Council initiative to support the county's response to the climate and nature emergencies. Some of the ways that we do this are through connecting with local groups and organisations, working with businesses and signposting to support and advice. The Sandwich Sessions is a brand new series of webinars that are designed to be short and informal, delivering information and guidance on specific topics, and all under 30 minutes. They are tailored to businesses, but they're open to everyone. And if you've got any topics or suggestions for these, you can pop them to the climate@Herefordshire email address on screen. We'll share that at the end as well. The next one is covering supporting nature at work. We'll be looking at how you can do that both at a small scale and at a larger, more involved scale, broader projects. And the link for that will be online very soon, so we'll be able to share that with you as soon as that is live. Next slide, please, Tina. Today, we're going to be hearing specifically about the charging infrastructure in Herefordshire, and we're going to have a case study from local business. We're going to be signposting you to grants and funding that's available to take advantage of at the moment, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions, as I said. But first of all, we're going to kick off with Tim Yare from the Midlands Net Zero Hub, who's going to give us a bit of a broad overview about what's going on across the Midlands and more specifically in the marches. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Rosie. Right, hi, my name is Tim. I work for an organisation called the Midlands Net Zero Hub. Do you want to next slide, Tina? I'm just going to give you a very brief update as to what the hub is about and what the pieces of work we've been doing in the EV sort of area. So the hub is here to we're funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, and our role is to support local authorities across the Midlands to deliver energy projects. We've been around for about 5 years now. We're entirely funded by government, and we're there just to add a bit of capacity, add a bit of support, a bit of experience, knowledge wherever it's needed. We're free point of view, so there's no additional funding required from Herefordshire or anywhere else, actually, for that matter, to get our involvement in projects. Next slide, please. So just want a quick look at the current EV infrastructure across the Midlands. If you look across the whole of the UK, we're low to middling, really, I guess, in terms of what infrastructure is there. We need a huge amount more. At the moment, we could have over 2 million electric EVs in just over 5 years' time on our roads, which is a massive increase on where we're at the moment. But we're expecting that to really ramp up over the next few years. And as a result of that, we're going to need to have a massive amount more infrastructure. At the moment, unfortunately, a lot of the infrastructure is, as you may expect, is concentrated around the big urban areas of Birmingham, the West Midlands, and maybe Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire area. So we are sort of playing catch up a little bit. But as you can see, if we're going to meet the targets that have been set, it's sort of 27 new charge points are needed every day. So it's a massive task that we've got to ourselves to try and sort out. Next slide, please, Tina. A few more figures then. You'll be able to see these slides in more detail when you get them. It's just to show you where we're at, sort of in relation to other parts of the UK and other parts of Europe as well. And you see, so the southeast, London in particular, massively far ahead in terms of the number of charge points per person in the UK. you can see in that top left graph. So we are, as I say, average, middling at best, really, and that's for the West Midlands. If you actually chunk that down to the county of Herefordshire, we would be slipping way down that chart even further. So we know we've got a lot of catching up to do. Compare that to what's going on across Europe, and you see the UK in its entirety as well down there, and Midlands Connect very, very far. That's the whole of the Midlands region is very far down that list of areas. So we do need to do quite a lot more on that, but we have got a lot of issues that stop us doing some of those increases that we require. And that can be anything from just general lack of capacity within the grid. Herefordshire in particular is a very grid constrained area. We don't have a lot of connectivity. The wires that exist from the substations are pretty much all at capacity. So actually we do need quite a lot of heavy infrastructure being put in place, or smart infrastructure being put in place to enable us to meet the targets that we've set ourselves. Next slide, please. So just bringing us down to the marches to see where we're at sort of, and where we need to get to in order to get to 2030 and 2050 targets. You can see that you can see again, even within the marches where majority of our EV charge points are situated, they're collected around the towns of and cities in our region. Not too much in between that, and that does cause problems with enabling people to sort of switch across to EVs, and it's something that we do need to tackle, especially when you consider the numbers that we're going to be needing to get to over the next 25, 30 years. So there's a lot of information on that slide, I appreciate, but it does show the scale of the issue. And one of the bottom part of that is particularly important, in that increase in the grid capacity that's needed, going up from sort of 43 gigawatt hours per year this year up to over 2,000 in just 30 years time, really. So it's a massive increase, and that's something that's going to take a lot of investment in our region to actually enable us to meet those targets. Next slide, please. So we have been doing, that's it. We have across the Midlands, we have been doing a number of projects that are based around EVs. These are all projects which have finished, really, but they're things that we can actually spread the learning from to enable Herefordshire or the marches or wherever to actually take some of the learning from these projects and put them in place in their patches. So just picked out a few. We've done a few more than this anyway, but the lettuce scheme, acronym city, I'm afraid, but there we go. So that was really looking at the taxes and seeing what needed to be put in place to enable those that sort of sector to switch across to low emission and EV projects. It was funded by government, and what it showed is that it is possible to actually change pretty much all of your taxes within a small area to EV, and enable you to find how much infrastructure needs to be put in place to enable that to happen. So it's a very successful project, and again, as I say, the learning from that and what they've done up in Staffordshire, Stoke and Staffs, can be quite easily lifted from there and put in place in here. So we've got some examples of the actual infrastructure. We've also done a lot of studies based around how much wiring and how much capacity will be required going forward as well. That work relates a little bit back to some of those figures and graphs that you saw earlier. So it does show that how much we need to be put in place. So again, all of that information is available. It's freely available to you to use if you need it. And then we've also looked at more specific problems for our area, looking at if we're going to change councils across to electric refuse vehicles, for instance, or all their fleet going across from petrol or diesel across to electricity, how much changes would be required even within their home bases to enable those vehicles to actually charge up. So we've done quite a lot of extensive work on depots and seeing how much more capacity is required to be added into a depot to enable those fleets to be transferred across, because we can't just change all those fleets without considering that where those are based and how we're going to charge them. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a lot of bin lorries not being able to go out because they haven't got enough charging in their batteries. So those are just 3 projects. We can take a lot of the learning from those and as I say, put that in place in any other part of the Midlands or the UK. Next slide, please. So what else can we help you with? We've been working with Midlands Connect, which is a regional transport body, and the hub. We've been working together to work out how we can support local authorities and others to build business cases for EVs. So we have built a number of business cases that we could use. We can work with you to actually help develop those business cases for converting across to EV. We've supported local authorities with various grants. The Levi grant, for instance, is one that we've used up in Stoke and Staffordshire. And we're also starting to think about it. It's not necessarily all about EVs. There may be necessary to look at different types of fuels as well. So maybe shorter term, maybe an issue needed to look at biodiesel, or we could even look at hydrogen as well. So there's a wider look at what fuels are going to be required. And then we are working with the local authorities across the Midlands and the local transport authorities to see how we can actually continue to share the good practice, the ideas, show things that have worked and things that haven't worked, so we can actually help businesses and local organisations, whoever really, on that switch over to EVs. I think that was my last slide. So I think we're going to come back to, yes, that's my last slide. So come back to questions if you've got any later.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tim. It's really good to have that regional context. I'm going to pass over to Belinda now, our Electrical Vehicle Infrastructure Officer. Belinda, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm working in the Sustainability and Climate Change team in a post that was government supported to help local authorities increase capacity within their teams to be able to deliver electric vehicle infrastructure. As Tim's made clear, you know, there is a big gap between what we currently have and what we need in the region. So the government has recognised that and put a little bit of funding in place to support staff to deliver that. Next slide, please. So hopefully this isn't sort of teaching your granny, but there's just a quick recap of the different types of challenges. The language around charging and charging infrastructure keeps changing. So it can be quite confusing to think, well, what do we need? And actually that's key for businesses when they're looking at fleet. What do we actually need, and not putting the wrong chargers in. So we're looking at slow chargers. They're the ones that would be overnight charging, street lamp chargers and the like, perhaps home chargers, long dwell times for those. Standard chargers, fast chargers, both very similar. You're looking at sort of 4 to 8 hours, 2 to 4 hours, depending on the kilowatts that the charger can put out in terms of how quickly it will take a typical vehicle to recharge. Rapid chargers, you're getting up then into the sort of less than an hour for most vehicles to charge. Ultra rapid, you're getting much quicker, and you're talking about some car parks, but sort of motorway type speeds for charging vehicles. So that's just a very quick run through. There's quite a range of charging types, and it is important to have the right charger in the right place. Next slide, please. So to give you a very quick bit of context as to where the council is with charge points, we started installing charge points back over 10 years ago now in car parks with some government funding. Most of those are still in place. They're what you would call the standard chargers. They're 7 kilowatts, so you're looking at long periods of time for charging to get a full charge on those. And over the years, we've had new providers come in. ChargeMaster took over the contract at one point. They replaced them with their newer units in 2019. We had an arrangement with highways. They wanted chargers every 20 miles along the strategic road network. So they funded charge points for us in Leominster, Hereford and Ross. And they're the Swarco rapid chargers that we have in our car parks. There's one of each of those. They're 50 kilowatt. And then in 2022, we awarded a concession contract to Winea. So as a local authority, we were thinking, how can we best support the switch to EVs? We've got car parks. Let's put some charge points in our car parks as a starter. So we awarded a concession contract to Winea. And the first part of that contract was replace the existing network with contactless, because one of the issues with charge points across the country over the years has been having an open network. Can anybody turn up at a charge point and use it without having to pay membership fees and all these other things? So this was the start of that journey by putting contactless chargers in, so you can actually turn up with a credit card if necessary, or a card, and just pay and go. And the plans with that contract is that charge points across the county in our car parks, there'll be an expansion, there'll be a significant increase. So we'll be looking at putting charging hubs in car parks across the county, including much faster ones, rapid and ultra rapid charge points. That expansion is starting. I'll talk a bit later about some of the constraints, but that process has started, and I would expect over this next year to see a rapid increase in the charge points in our car parks, and they're all publicly available. And we'll also be putting in things like wider bays and things like that, because there's various things to consider with EVs, and having bigger vehicles, wider bays, better access is one of the issues. So that's kind of where we are with our car parks. And then Tim has already mentioned the Levi scheme, Local Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Scheme. And this was funding that the government made available to local authorities to try and increase charge point provision, particularly in areas where people are going to struggle with, they have no driveways. That's one of the key things they were worried about. If you've got a driveway, you can put a home charger on your house, and then you can park your car in your driveway and charge your car. If you don't have a driveway, you're going to rely pretty much on the public charging network. And in order to try and plug that gap, the government's provided money to say, OK, we want some on-street charge points. They're going to be the slower ones, generally, the fast or standard chargers. But you'll be able to park your car at one of these on-street charge points, charge it overnight, and you don't have to worry about if you don't have a driveway. So we're working with a consortium of local authorities and Midlands Connect to roll out some on-street chargers. There's two main funds that we're working with. One is a pilot, which we are expecting to award a contract this month, possibly May, actually, for the start of the contract. And that will be looking at rolling out in Herefordshire around 50 on-street charge points, publicly available again. And then the main fund, which is a much bigger pot for Hereford, we're working on the procurement for that at the moment, and that would be looking to roll out 200 plus on-street charge points. So we're expecting these on-street provision to start next year, next financial year, this coming financial year, 24-25. So I've just got some examples there. The blue and white charger is one of the Swarco ones. I think Tim had a similar unit. They seem to be very reliable. That's in the Leominster car park. Winea, as I say, is our current concession contract provider, and Midlands Connect is the group that's helping us with the consortium. And then we've put in a link to ZapMatch, which you probably most know about, and that's a very good live map. It shows you where all the charge points are in the country, whether they're available or not, what size charge point they have, how much you have to pay, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So how does that help businesses in the county? The expansion in the car parks, because all the charge points that the council is involved in being installed are publicly available. So anybody can use any of our charge points. We are putting in the wider bays with sort of hatching either side to give a bit more space. So there's no reason why vans can't use them, particularly when we start getting the rapid and ultra rapid chargers in for quicker turnarounds. That's obviously going to be helpful to businesses who are thinking of moving over to fleet, because they know that even if they don't have capacity to charge on site, there is more provision for them out and about to top up. The Levi funded sites, so on-street provision, particularly for those companies where maybe members of staff will take home electric vans or electric vehicles. Perhaps if that's being able to charge on street close to where you live is going to help support that as well. So we are expecting that those sites will be used by by residents who are perhaps using business vehicles. And overall, we're putting together an EV strategy, which it'll be a live document. So we're going to be adding to it and reviewing it every couple of years, because the system, the whole industry is changing so fast. But that will include, internal actions that we're going to take, how we're liaising with stakeholders, and obviously businesses and business organisations will be one of those, to see what we can do to help support businesses in the switch to EV. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just on the council website, we have dedicated web pages for the charge points that we've got in and the ones we're going to put in. We keep that updated with news of what's going on, where the charge points are, how much they cost, and what speed they are. We also have an EV drivers email group. So anybody that's interested in being sent, we don't bombard people with emails. We occasionally send out emails on upcoming installations, and we get quite good feedback as well. So if any businesses want to sign up to that EV drivers group, it's quite useful to sort of get the heads up on what our plans are going forward. And also on the web pages, we have a location request. So if there's any on-street locations or any locations that the members of the public or businesses or whatever say, actually, you know what, it'd be really useful to have some charge points here, they can be sent through to us. And although obviously we can't guarantee that charge points will be installed, it's really useful for us to know where the need is and what kind of provision we can provide. I have a feeling the next slide is the courtyard, is it? But oh no, practical considerations. Okay, so just quickly, and Tim did touch on it, it's not that straightforward. There are a lot of considerations. There's problems with capacity on the network. When we've been looking at doing our expansion in the car parks, we quite often can't put in either the numbers or the speed of charge points that we would like, because there isn't enough capacity on the grid. And this is a problem that if businesses are looking to put their own charge points in, they may well come across as well. It's also caused us quite a lot of delays, because even if there is capacity, the DNO might be busy with jobs, and therefore the time to get the charge points installed is delayed. We've also had issues with connectivity and mobile signal, because a charge point, as the piece of kit in the ground, is basically a glorified piece of kit. It doesn't work unless it has a stable connection with the back office, and the back office is where all the software is supported to make sure that the connections are working, that the charging is working, that the costs and everything works. So without a strong connection with the back office, you can have issues with charge points and their reliability. It's quite often not the kit, it's the back office connection that's the problem. Accessibility, so depending on if you want to put your own charge points in, and also for ours, looking at accessibility, taking into account that you may have to consider how people with disabilities might be able to access them, and there's guidance. PAS 1899 was released, I think it was last year, it might have been 22, but it's not law, but it is guidance, and it's very useful for making sure that your charge points you put in are accessible. And we'll be looking at that for our charge points as well. And as I mentioned earlier, with the different types of charge points, it's really important to have the right charge point in the right place. So if you're thinking about moving your fleet over to EV, how long are your vehicles at your depot or wherever you're going to put charge points in? What's the dwell time? Do you need to have a really quick turnaround, in which case you need a faster charge point? Or are vehicles going to be charging overnight, in which case you can get away with a slower one, which doesn't have the same issues in terms of DNO connection? What routes are you doing? How far do your vehicles go in a day? Is it something that you can... all these kind of things would be taken into account. How far do they go in a day? Do they need to charge every day? Or could you actually share charge points between fleet vehicles, because they don't all need to be charged overnight? These kind of things. And again, as I said, whether you want standard, rapid, ultra rapid, what your requirement is, because there's quite a different cost. Ultra rapids and rapids are more expensive to buy and install than a standard charger. Next slide, please, Rosie. Oh, there you go. I think over to Rosie now to talk about the case study.
Brilliant. Thank you, Belinda. That was really helpful. I do have a case study from, some of you may know, Phil Percy from the Courtyard. He can't be here today, but he has given me permission to share this on his behalf. I will try and rattle through it because I am aware of time. But Phil says installing EV chargers is something we've wanted to do as part of an environmental action plan since 2019. As a not-for-profit community arts charity, funding has always been our biggest barrier to capital projects. And most projects are simply not possible if they require substantial match funding or investment. The main barriers to the project have been funding, space, infrastructure, such as grid capacity and general lack of expertise. To help us overcome those barriers, in 2020, we joined an Arts Council England accelerator programme with Julie's Bicycle, a pioneering non-profit organisation specialising on mobilising the arts and culture to take action on the climate crisis. The programme opened up lots of networking opportunities and discussions, following which we made contact with Ian Chapman, working on behalf of the European Social Fund, who identified 2 providers who could potentially supply a hub at no cost to the courtyard, Winea and Chargy. We contacted the council's EV network contractor Winea, who presented an offer due to the courtyard's attractive location. With the help of experts and our own knowledge of the utilities on site, we identified the best place for the hub. Winea have handled all logistics and the district network operator has approved the plans. We are currently at the legal stage and waiting for tenancy agreements to be drawn up to move forward with the project, but agreement and plans are firmly afoot. So this is really just an example of one of the ways, an alternative route to installing charge points by approaching an operator who may do the work on your behalf if the location is attractive enough and high traffic enough for them to see it as viable. If you do have any questions regarding that, obviously that'll be better directed to Phil, but do pop them in the chat or to the climate inbox and I will direct them to him and try and coordinate a response if you have any questions regarding that. I am going to pass back to Belinda now just to run through the grant and funding opportunities, some of the grant and funding opportunities available through the government at the moment, and then hopefully we might spend a minute or two on any questions that you might have. Thank you, Belinda.
Yeah, no problem. So at the moment there is some government grant support available. They've got an electric vehicle infrastructure grant for staff and fleets. I've just copied that name straight across, but it pretty much does what it says on the tin. Small and medium-sized businesses, you can get money off the cost of wider building and installation works. That's the link to it. So when you go on the government website, that'll give you all the information. The plug-in van and grant scheme, that's one actually that vehicle manufacturers access, but it means that it subsidises the cost of the vehicle. So when you buy them from the manufacturer, they already have that grant applied to them. And I've put the zero emission electric vehicles link. That kind of takes you to the headline government page, and then you can follow all these other grants. Next slide, please, Tina. So 2 other ones that might be of interest: workplace charging grant scheme. So as I mentioned before, if you want to put chargers in yourself or your staff or your fleet, there are some government grants available. They tend to work on a sort of voucher scheme. So you apply for the grant and it allows a certain amount towards the cost. You have to do all the installation and whatever, but you can arrange all of that, but you get the money off. And it's a contribution really towards the cost. And then they've recently brought one in for schools, state-funded education institutions. Similar idea, support, bit of grant support for you if you want to put charge points in at state-funded education institutes. So the links are all there. You can have a look at those when you get to see the slides. Next slide. I think that was, yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to raise, I literally did a Google search of, you know, support for EV fleet. All these different things popped up. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of fleet related organisations that are talking about, okay, how can we support you swapping over to EV? And the Energy Saving Trust, I just wanted to pop that one in because they're a sort of government funded organisation and they will provide insight advice, training, consultancy. So if you're thinking of going to EV fleet, contact the Energy Savings Trust and they can take you sort of through the whole process and give you advice and guidance on how to do that. Yeah, that was it really, just to point those out to you. And as I say, those links will be when you get the copies, and those other headings, just Google EV fleet. There's an awful lot of advice out there actually. That's me done, I think.
Brilliant. We just want to open the floor to any questions. I realise we've overrun slightly, but if anybody has any questions they'd like to address to Belinda or Tim, please use the raise hand function and we can steer you in the right direction. If we haven't any questions, guys, that's absolutely fine. We will have the contact details available on the final slide that we'll be sharing, as well as brilliant. Thank you, Tina. As well as your ability to pop questions in the chat. So please do get in touch if you've got anything you want us to address directly with yourselves. All our contact details are there. I did realise I didn't introduce myself. My name's Rosie. I am an officer at the Sustainability and Climate Change team at the council. You may have seen my name on many of the emails that I've sent to you. If you're part of the Greener Footprints business network, there is an opportunity to join that network if you want to stay up to date with any future sandwich sessions, as well as any other events that we run through the Greener Footprints initiative. Please do bring your suggestions to the climate inbox if you've got anything that you're really keen to have a little bit more of an insight on, whether that's what the council are doing in a particular area, or we can look at getting other experts in to talk about specific topics if you feel there's anything that you could benefit from as a business through these sessions. But otherwise, thank you so much for your attendance today. It's been really great to get these off the ground, and I think we can look forward to more in the future.